Yeah.
to make sure everybody is okay with being recorded and being online. So a very warm welcome to you all this afternoon. As Kath kindly said, I am the chair of ABPN. It's an absolute privilege to be so. Kath and I work hand in hand as chair and deputy chair. It's more like co-chair, really, isn't it, Kath? The work that we do. And we absolutely work closely with Bernie, our president, and we're delighted that Bernie is on the call with us today. So I've been asked to formally give apologies from ABPN fellow Fiona Smith, who a lot of you will know. She cannot join today, and she specifically asked me to say that it's because she has a hospital appointment that she needed to attend. So she would have really wanted to be here, but obviously that appointment is very important. So thank you everybody for coming. We have really plenty to discuss. I'm sure it'll be a lively discussion. Kath, we have deliberately planned that we haven't got reams of PowerPoint presentations or anything. This is important discussion, crucial for the future of children's nursing, safety of children, and so on. And it's all about delegation. Now, in the information that's on the website, some of you will have spotted it says delegation. And I think it's a Freudian slip about where we think we're going with this. So without more ado, I'll hand over to Kath, please. Thank you.
Oh, thanks ever so much. And I'm going to say hi, everyone. I'm Kath, Director of Children's Nursing at Berks Health, and very much deputy to Jean. So I do exactly as she tells me to. And I'm still on a very steep learning curve with regard to the brilliant Association of British Paediatric Nurses. So I feel like a very new member in comparison to Bernie's decades and Jean's decades of membership. But Gina, just before we actually head into a conversation, and I think you're absolutely right, we do want to have a conversation. I mean, my goodness, we have got so many experts on the call. We really want to hear from colleagues. So if you're able to actually pop your cameras on, we would love to see your faces so that, you know, we can really engage in a conversation, because it really isn't death by PowerPoint in any way, shape or form. This is about learning from each other, what's working, where are our current challenges, and how do we actually manage to take things forward collectively as well. But Jean, I'm very aware that we've got a brilliant event coming up on the 30th of June. And yes. I just wondered as to whether I could pick your brains a little bit, just to use that opportunity to give it a bit of a plug, actually.
Yes. Do you want to start, Kath? Really, because you have got quite a coup on this, haven't you? We're talking about Children's Nurses Day, 30th of June, inaugural launch. We're well before time in getting this day of recognition for children's nurses. But Kath has really managed to have a coup on this. So would you say what you've been able to do, please, Kath?
Oh, thanks, Jean. And I think sort of, you know, it's huge thanks to the Association of British Paediatric Nurses for really saying, you know, we have Nurses Day, we have days that celebrate neonatal nurses, we have days that celebrate clinical nurse specialists. So where was our day to actually celebrate children's nursing and the contribution that we all make in improving child health outcomes? So the 30th of June has been identified. I'm hoping that everyone knows about the 30th of June and that it's in everyone's diaries. It's a Tuesday. Here at Barts Health, we've had a lot of exciting conversations about how we're going to be celebrating, and we've managed to secure a little bit of funding to actually provide afternoon tea on the 29th of June, the day before, and we're inviting the great and the good, but importantly, those delivering direct care to actually come together and really celebrate the contribution of children's nurses, not just at Barts Health, but across North East London and London. So we're really, really excited about that. But I've been on a number of calls over recent weeks where we've been talking about how people are actually celebrating. There were some brilliant examples of inviting executive members of the board to actually come and see what children's nurses actually do in EDs, on the wards, in daycare, out in children's community nursing services, within health visiting, within school nursing. So please do make the most of the opportunity. There's a lovely page on the website where you can nominate your children's nursing heroes. It would be fantastic to have loads of pictures of children's nurses from across the country, from all different areas of practice, really being celebrated as well, because my goodness, we're a force to be reckoned with, and the more visible that we can make ourselves, the better. So let's really make the most of this first day on the 30th of June, but also hopefully grow it, because it would be absolutely fantastic to see this spread beyond the 4 countries of the UK and actually think about sort of, international celebration of the contribution that nurses make to babies, children and young people. Now, Bernie, before I move on, have I missed anything about celebrating Children's Nurses Day?
No, I think everybody can do their own thing. There's guidance on the website. Lots of the universities are doing celebrations. Lots of the trusts are doing celebrations. So if you don't feel that you can manage to create a celebration all of your own, there's probably something that you can actually join in with, because I know it can be a bit exhausting trying to find the will to actually create a celebration, but you could just join a celebration and that would be just as fabulous. And we'll be on social media, and so you can do it that way if you're not able to come in person to things. So yeah,
fabulous, brilliant. Go for it, Jean.
Yes, just to say, to drum up some enthusiasm, which is there, I must say, but just to make the day a little bit more special. It's definitely 4 countries. There are 10 centres who are the main centres, but we can have many more than 10, but there's been 10 designated centres. I am in North Wales in Bangor University and the designated centre for Wales, to really make it a little bit more mixed in the way of showing what we do. We're inviting people to send in posters of their work, what child nursing means to them. And we will put the posters on our website so everybody can see people's work and how important it all is. We're also having a cake stall, cacan stondin, it's called in Welsh, to raise some money for our children's services. And the other thing we thought we'd do is have a bake-off style competition for child-themed cakes. And then the students said, well, can we please also have the best pizza topping competition? So we've got loads of baking going on as well. So just to really, create something special for the day. And it will be a day that we celebrate every year from now on. So thank you for, bearing with us while we talk about that. And shall we just ask Kath if anybody else is doing something similar or very different?
Like a brilliant idea, actually. Has anybody got any plans that they want to share? Anybody really been able to progress this? Feel free to either chip in or pop it in the chat box. Entirely up to you. Oh, go for it, Amanda. Thank you. Thank you for rescuing me there.
It's okay, no problem at all. Jill, we're having a bit of a party. Music, games, history wall, some speakers, students, staff. Hopefully we'll have some pictures. Yeah, hopefully a bit of a party vibe. Celebrate what's going on. We've got some practice partners coming to us as well. And hopefully next year to celebrate the day, we'll do follow the suggestion you made about pooling our resources. So hopefully we'll jointly hold something with one of our major practice partners. So that's exciting.
Amanda, may I ask, which university are you?
Apologies, Jill.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I'm loving the idea of a history wall. So I've just written that one down, and that's what we'll be creating here at Barts. Thanks for that idea, Amanda.
No worries. It will be paper-based and electronic as well, whichever floats your boat.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Looks as though we're heading over to, is it Elizabeth?
It's actually Sam joining. Elizabeth and I've joined on the same link just so we can be in the same room together.
Thanks, Sam. Over to you.
It was just to say we've got quite a small trust just with one children's ward and obviously all the community bits that go with it. So we're all getting together, all the children's nurses across the trust, for like a bring and share lunch. And then we're also doing Guess the Baby. So you know where you bring in a photo and it's displayed and you have to guess who the baby photo is. But I quite like the what children's nursing means to you idea as well. So maybe we'll get people writing that on the day or something so that we can collate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. Anybody else want to share what they're up to? I can see a couple of things actually coming into the chat box. Janine's got it in the diary, so she's soaking up all of the tips. Fantastic. Brilliant, Carla. New children's ward here at the University of Bradford. Still in the planning stages. Excellent stuff. Great. There we go. Well, keep the ideas actually coming. And as Bernie said, please do share what you get up to on social media on the day. Unfortunately, Twitter isn't as it was with X, but LinkedIn is a really good platform as well. There's Instagram. So the ABPN has got an Instagram page. So please do tag us. And we've also got Facebook as well. So lots of opportunities there. And I think that leads us very nicely, Jean, into the experts that are children's nurses. And I think sort of, what we wanted to do this afternoon was have a conversation about how we best utilise that expertise moving forward. And I think within all of us is an absolute desire to work in partnership with organisations to ensure that children, importantly, are kept safe. And so much of that is about sharing our expertise, but actually doing that within the scope of our professional code of conduct, and making sure that we are keeping those elements relating to governance front and centre in our practice. So what we wanted to do was recognise that there's a lot of guidance out there. So the Royal College of Nursing has got sort of a lovely suite of information and resources about delegation that I'm sure that colleagues have actually accessed. The NMC has got guidance with regard to delegation and what it means. But what we wanted to do was actually open it up. What does delegation mean for us as children's nurses? Where is it working? Where are opportunities to actually strengthen our practice? And I somehow suspect that we may well have a lot of conversation this afternoon about delegation within schools and within community settings. And interestingly, I had the joy of spending time with a brilliant Trudy Ward, who I can see on the call. We were actually chatting about this, and I was reflecting on how helpful it's been, certainly in England, to actually have the document supporting children and young people with medical conditions and allergy. And the consultation for that document has actually recently closed. It closed at the beginning of May. But actually that document is really helping to move us in a positive direction with regard to those ongoing partnership arrangements as well around this particular area. So it may be that we want to actually reflect on that. So I'm going to open it up. What are your views? What are your experiences? What are your thoughts around delegation, the elements relating to accountability, responsibility, teaching, and how do we move this forward professionally? And because Trudy is there at the top of my screen, Trudy, can I pick your brains? What are your thoughts about delegation?
Yeah, oh, thanks, Kath. I mean, I've come on today because obviously we need to make sure that we're all current. But I know when we had a brief conversation, I said two things to you that stay with me throughout around sort of really well-governed delegated duties. Okay, and you mentioned governance earlier on, and that's a key feature of it that supports nurses in their job. But the two elements for me is good delegation, a good delegation framework that is well governed. Number one, promotes safety in children. And the other element is that it protects the profession of nursing and in the tasks that we delegate. I mean, we also know about it protects the profession of physiotherapy in certain skills as well, but we're here today to talk about nursing. So for me, the fundamental of good delegation and current nursing in 2026, you know, it affords us the need to do delegation in schools, and I know we'll talk about that. And I, as I say, I think it's really important that we unpick the guidance from the code from the NMC, the guidance from the Royal College of Nursing, and what good delegation is all about. And a lot of nurses get really worried about whether they are doing the right thing. And the key to that is the governance framework. Is that enough to start the ball rolling?
I think that that's incredibly helpful to start the ball rolling, Trudy. And I'm just going to open it up and ask colleagues, you have all got tremendous amount of experience on the call. Any situations that you found have worked incredibly well because of those strong governance arrangements, or any situations where you thought, my goodness, we could have been working differently? Laura, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, I'm Laura Edwards. I am a children's nurse working in the community, but for a private company care provider. So we provide care at home and in schools with nurses and healthcare support workers. Obviously there's an enormous amount of delegation that happens there, but we've got two things because we are delegating responsibility to nurses and healthcare support workers who we are not physically with at that time. So they will be caring for children at home overnight, for example, ventilated, trachees, central lines, various things. Although we obviously put them through quite intense training and competency assessment, as soon as we step away, the responsibility is delegated and the accountability will always rest with the registered nurse. So I just wondered whether anybody else had that sort of experience. Yeah. if that
Laura,
opens it up at all.
thank you for sharing that perspective. Let's keep on going and let's see as to whether we can pull some of these threads together. But that very lived experience of the complexity that you're actually grappling with is really, really helpful. Let's head over to Amanda. Sorry, Laura, go for it.
While you're on me, could I just say one other thing? We've been asked to provide to the integrated care boards that commission us evidence of using adult registered nurses within children's nursing packages, many of which have worked for plus of 20 years with children, and where that lies, because they're not registered children's nurses as well. So that would be useful to have sort of information and experience to be able to go back and sort of give the reasons why we do that, and why, I mean, children's nurses are not always available readily to work, but yeah.
Let's pick up on that theme as well, Laura. Really helpful.
Thank you so much. Brilliant.
Thank you. Amanda.
Thank you. Yeah, just from my perspective, it's important when we're working with the students that they understand that they're the recipients of delegation and not the primary delegators. So we work really hard with the theoretical components, especially within a couple of our assessments, to ensure the students understand their accountability within that, and also picking up on the point that's just been made really about when a nurse, a registered nurse, does delegate that task. Actually, when someone walks away, even when that has been delegated, that there's still some supervision and accountability that's actually attached to that. But that is very different when you're a registered professional compared to when you're a student, because they do struggle with that, and sometimes up to 2 years post registration they can struggle with the difference to that. So that's the key thing for us working with pre-registered student nurses, to understand the difference.
Really helpful to have that HEI perspective. Thanks, Amanda. Let's keep moving around. Michael, would you mind introducing yourself? I think you're still on mute because we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Sorry, I just introduced myself. Thanks very much, Kath. So I'm Dr. Michael Fanner, I'm a consultant nurse in the 0-19 Public Health Nursing Service in Croydon. So we've got quite a variety of workforce, including children's nurses and skill mix. So I think my point, I was really interested to come along today, so thanks for accepting my invite. So I think when we talk about delegation, there's probably, we can make it into a binary almost instantly between acute and community. And I think community delegation probably requires a different sort of attention. And I think it's complex, especially in 0-19, where you've got largely a well population where health needs may not be obvious. So if you've got a child on the ward, you kind of know what's going on, but you've got skill mix going out, identifying needs as well as working within the needs that have been identified. That creates complexity. And I think there's a difference between functional judgment and professional judgment, and I'm never sure in nursing we really talk about them. I think the other, there's sort of there's a fragility in the community when it around having a small variation of qualification and experience. So by and large, it's almost like very varied. So it's really difficult to standardize how delegation works. But I think it's about frameworks. I think it is about supervision, but also it's about confidence in the workforce. And I don't think we often talk about confidence as a quality in those being delegated to, and vice versa. So that's just my few pennies worth.
Really helpful, a few pennies worth. So again, let's keep going and just picking up on some of these themes. Ibby, now I know you, but you'll need to introduce yourself to everybody else.
Hi, I'm Ibby. I'm a community children's nurse trainer and educator, and a huge part of my role is around delegation of tasks and training people to meet those tasks. But I think for me, one of the biggest things is that I didn't necessarily click that I was delegating tasks. And I think there's something about that conversation, because within just within children's nursing, we give parents a lot of tasks to do. So to us, a lot of the training is normal in that we're just passing on the tasks that parents have been doing and providing training so that somebody other than parents can do it. And I think some of the difficulty that I have personally had with regards to schools has been them seeing these as very complex tasks, which, because we're used to parents doing them, we don't see as that complex, because we're talking about children when they're well. We're wanting them to do the task. We're not wanting them to do it when they're unwell. So to us, it's like, oh, this is just routine, and it's how we match that up with the expectations of other lay people. And then I think it's also about some of the documentation that's out there. We don't have a list now of delegated tasks, because it's too wide ranging, but that in a way has made it more difficult, because we can't then say, well, you're fine, what we're asking you to do is okay because it's on this list, because now it might not be on the list. And obviously we don't want to limit, but yeah, I think it's very complex. And you can have lots of processes, but I think that as children's health continues to evolve, it's going to continue to be an issue for us.
Really helpful reflections there, Ibby. And I'm also picking up on your role as an educator as well. And, you know, we wouldn't have a children's ward being run without a practice development nurse, without an educator. I'm not sure that consistently we've got those education roles baked into community services as well. So perhaps that's sort of a thread that we can pick up on. Emily, lovely to have you on the call, and great to see you. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Kath. I'm Emily Gilmont-Farry, and I am the service manager for community paediatrics in the Western Trust in Northern Ireland, despite my very English accent. Over in Northern Ireland, delegation is a massive issue. So we are not commissioned in the same way. There are not packages of care as there are the same in England. And so a lot of our care is delegated to our own staff, but also to people that are directly employed by parents to support that child at home. It's a very different setup. And so when all of this sort of kicked off, there was a panel developed that is multidisciplinary, because social care is part of our remit as well, because we're health and social care trusts in Northern Ireland. And so we come together, the nurse puts together a risk matrix to look at whether that task will be delegatable, and decides whether or not she or he feels that that task can be delegated to non-registrants. If there's any risks, so if it goes into an amber or a red, that means that we take it to that multidisciplinary panel and we chat about whether or not that is safe to delegate. I had never thought about it in that way. I'm exactly the same as Ibby. I had never considered delegation in this way. So I think, you know, delegation is a massive thing for us in Northern Ireland. And so it's really good to come together nationally to talk about it, because it can be quite different in the different regions. And I think the other thing that we've got is not only registrants, where there's also some talk now around some members of teams wanting to delegate teaching to other nurses. And so there is some confusion for us. So it would be really good to look at whether we can delegate roles and tasks to other nurses on behalf of ourselves as well, because we've always thought about it from a non-registrant point of view, but be good to think about it from whether we can effectively ask our colleagues to do the same. And that probably links in with what Laura's doing in terms, because she's got nurses going in and non-registrants.
Emily, thanks ever so much. I can see immediately in the chat box, there's an ask. Could you possibly share that risk matrix?
I will go to our head of governance, who's an amazing man called John. But yes, that should be absolutely fine to share.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Emily. Really appreciated. And it's great to get the different countries actually and different perspectives on the call this afternoon. Joanna, may we come over to you? Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Joanna. I'm a director of nursing at a private provider for home care. So used to the delegation side of things. It's what we do on a day-to-day basis. My question is, can we talk about where nursing associates fit in? Because I'm still not that clear. Please. Thank you.
Okie dokie. So let's pick up on the nursing associates as well. Trudy, can I hang on to you? Because I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to draw you in on lots of these themes that we've actually picked up on. So I'm going to head over to Nicola over at the Whittington, if that's okay. Nicola, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hiya, I'm Nicola Tanner, a children's diabetes nurse at the Whittington in North London. So this topic has come up quite a lot in the diabetes forum. We've spent quite a lot of time talking about it and worrying about it. And a few of the themes that have come through quite a lot is that we delegate the role of diabetes care to school staff and teachers and teaching assistants, and they're staff members that we haven't met before. We don't know them, so we don't get to choose who we're delegating this care to. So we've got no knowledge of their experience or their background or their skills. And we're training them in a simulated environment because it wouldn't be appropriate or possible to sort of practice giving injections on a child in a sort of a live environment like that. So it's all simulated. And then we have no oversight when they go in and deliver the care. So we can't see what they're doing. So we train them in a simulation environment with lots of scenarios. But yeah, it's an uncomfortable position to be in, to sort of delegate to somebody that you don't know and you don't know their capabilities and assess their competency in a simulated environment and then let them go. So yeah, that's a struggle we're facing.
Thanks, Nicola. Really, really helpful to have that very real world scenario played out. So let's draw back on that theme as well. Now, is it Mora Lake?
Yes, I'm Mora Lake. I'm happy to be called Mo. I'm Mo. I'm a school nurse working with Central and Northwest London NHS Trust. I'm head of healthcare in a children's secure school. This is a setting for children that have been remanded or sentenced. And I'm just trying to understand everybody's, perspective of this. So the setting where I work, it is not 24 hours healthcare. So that means there are times when there will be healthcare needs, but then the nurses or, healthcare staff on site. So the service is commissioned in a way that the residential team will pick this up, but also, so that includes Meds administration, for example, and Meds administration is something they do regardless of whether healthcare is on site or not. So again, this is about commissioning, but also delegation in a way, because we are responsible for prescribing those medication and reviewing those medication, but they are commissioned to administer it. So obviously when there's no healthcare on site, they will pick that up and manage that as much as possible. But when there is ongoing healthcare for a child, ongoing healthcare condition for a child, for example, and you're thinking, okay, so I've done this for this child while I am not here, this is what you need to do for that child. So that's still part of delegation. But I'm just trying to understand, because again, we take off some of the training as well, but also the commissioning is different in a way, and it makes it really difficult because you don't know whether you're delegating or So I'm just a little bit just picking up on what everyone is saying and where we sit in terms of commissioning and how that links with delegating as well, and how you feel about doing that, how you train people and you're not there. So for example, you're living site, the child is on therapeutic observation, for example, and you're not here, but you've given someone information on what they need to do, what they need to look out for. So that is interesting. I'm just listening to what everybody is saying, but it's that feeling like, how am I sure you can do? You're doing what you need to do, and to identify and escalate when it's something somebody else needs to manage, really.
Mo, so helpful to hear your thinking actually evolve as again you're sharing your real lived experience with us. And I can just see in the chat box actually that sort of, I think it's Kate Kate's just popped in actually about sort of, increasingly complex packages and situations, but training and education support and infrastructure hasn't kept pace with regard to some of these challenges and the inconsistency. And Mo, I could really hear you actually calling that out from a commissioning, but also practice-based sort of perspective there. Katie, let's head over to you. And if there are any other colleagues who want to share their very lived experiences and challenges before we actually head back to Trudy, that would be really appreciated. So please do pop your hand up. Katie.
Hiya, I'm Katie. I'm a PEDS stoma and neurology nurse based in Newcastle, and I just wanted to come on off the back of what Nicola was saying and how they deliver their diabetes training in a simulation type setting. So in our trust, or in my sort of service, we deliver training a little bit differently in schools. We do it on an individual child basis. So we go out to the schools and a bit like Nicola, we've never met these people who have been chosen to carry out this task for the children until the day. So we go out and deliver the training on the day with the child in tow for both stoma and catheter cares. And yeah, it's really sort of nerve-wracking leaving that delegation with them, but being left as the nurse kind of that it falls back on responsible with. So yeah, that's our lived experience here in my team.
Thanks, Katie. Really, really helpful to hear. And that's what this afternoon's about, actually. It's sharing ideas and good practice and how we can move things forward together. Kate, over to you.
Oh, hi, thanks, Kath. It was just I made the comment about providers being asked to take on complex packages of care. And I think just to share a clinical example, we've been asked to provide care for a very complex 1-year-old, but needs continuous intermittent catheterization in the community. Now, within our care provision, I'm a paediatric nurse, but it's not something that I've got clinical experience in and being able to provide. And we've really struggled to access kind of training to be able to upskill ourselves or our carers. And one of the barriers that we've come across is that the specialist nursing teams, which have put this care task in place, have not been prepared to kind of train us as a care provider, either the carers or ourselves as the clinical leads. And their rationale behind this, which I completely, empathise and understand with, is that again, it comes around delegation. I think linking a little bit to what Emily from Ireland was saying about their reticence in terms of delegating tasks or training, providing education to our carers and our clinical leads when you don't really know who you're delegating and training to. So at present, we haven't been able to access any training in the private sector to be able to provide this skill for this child. And there's kind of other care tasks as well that I can think of, but there is the majority of care provision is by private providers, and we need that support from the NHS teams to be able to maintain and upskill our own staff and education to be able to have that care provision. Now, sadly, at the moment, that care task needs to sit with the family. So there are other parts of the care that we're able to provide and support, but we're not able to fully support this poor family in the community because we can't access adequate training. We are looking into that and it's ongoing. If anyone is able to share of a private continence nurse specialist that might be able to support us with training, we're happy to fund it. Please put it in a chat because we'd really welcome that. So thank you.
Thanks, Kate. And again, just really important for us to hear the realities and the critical need for partnerships, as we sort of, keep the child at the centre and how we actually make sure that we're doing the best for that individual child and family. Emily.
It was just to say to Kate, I would approach Eric for your catheter needs because they can do bespoke training. ERIC. They're absolutely amazing and it's some of the best training I've ever done. So they may well be able to help you.
Fabulous.
That's great. Thank you so much.
That's what these calls are all about. Brilliant. Thank you, Emily. Linda. Oh, Linda, we can't hear you. I think you might still be on mute.
Sorry, I work for a private company as well. And just to reiterate what Kate said, it is difficult sometimes to get the training in place for our care teams. And I think the massive barrier is that it's a private company, we should be paying for it, which we are prepared to do, but actually getting people in certain areas. I work in the northwest of England, and we're so very lucky between Liverpool, Alderhay and Manchester Children's to get so much support, but where clients are a little further afield, such as Lancaster, there is no provision whatsoever, and very difficult to obtain physio training. It's easier for some tasks because for myself, I've been nursing almost 40 years, so I have been at Alderhay for most of that. So I have gained a lot of experience that I can pass on. But where we've got newer nurses in the company who've not got that experience, again, they can't go out training what they don't know. And it's even if you've got the experience, you want that backup. And it's a bit of a two-way thing. You want to refresh your training. We can't always get that training because things change and we need to be updated. So what I did 10 years ago is not going to cut it now. And on the other flip side, when we are training carers, I find it very difficult to delegate and draw back. I almost want to hover over them. And it is true, once you've given them that training, it's on them. And my sort of standby is document, document, document. Absolutely, word for word, everything in competencies that you have gone through in quite explicit detail, so that when they come back to you and say, oh, they couldn't do this, it's there and they have signed for it. You've got that sort of, it's a little bit of peace of mind because you've done the training and you can take a horse to water. But unfortunately, we don't always get the calibre of staff that retain that information once you've gone 2 weeks down the line.
Linda, again, thank you so much. And just that reinforcement of documentation is absolutely critical for us all. Thank you. Susanna.
Hi there, I'm Sue Hollick. I'm a nursing head of service in Sussex Community NHS Foundation Trust. We, like many other people across the nation, are having real struggles with our delegation to the non-registered workforce within partnership arrangements. And this is where we are delegating to schools or residential services and a range of clinical skills. And the expectations and commitments of our partners is really difficult. We really struggle with commitment of time to complete delegation because, as we know, it's not just training, it's underpinning theory, it's then observation in practice, it's competency sign-off, and this takes a lot of time. Schools and things are challenged with part-time workforce and the numbers of people they want trained to be able to accommodate a child attending school or remaining safe within a residential placement is really, really high. And actually that goes against all of our values of safety and governance regarding the number of people they want trained, as opposed to how many we feel is actually safe clinical practice. You need to be doing repetition of skill. You need to be, we need that evidence that they're going to be doing that regularly before we'll even entertain that. This is a subject that I could literally talk for days on. And I think that there needs to be a huge amount of investment nationally to support our nurses who are delegating care whilst retaining an accountability. I think it definitely needs a higher national presence. We really need to get this safe for the children and young people, but also for our registrants.
Sue, very well said there, and very clearly articulated in terms of, the time, the capacity, the sheer volume of people that actually require the education, training, etc. Really, really helpful. Amanda.
Yeah, it's just to reply to Michael's comment about the theoretical elements around delegation. And part of the triple SA is that delegation is taught from a theoretical perspective and then reinforced out in practice, again through the triple essay standards. But it's picking up on what Linda said. So the distinction is very different for the expectations on staff to pre-registered professionals. So that would include NAs, and that would include pre-registration student nurses as well. And again, for the pre-registration student nurses and the NAs, that would potentially be very different. But the one thing to note that, again, just like someone suggested about wider thoughts around the UK on this, is looking at the code, whilst we have a lot of guidance within the code, it isn't very specific, nailed to the wall about competence and accountability, and that is really difficult for our students, and again it's difficult for our staff as well. So I have got an example to share. So currently we're looking at PAR documents, and a student in our locality explained a situation with a patient where they were delegated a task by a member of staff, and this was a task that was very acute and very high level in the neonatal area, and this was not a task that should have been delegated to a student nurse without supervision. Of course, as practice staff, we are able to delegate these tasks if we feel the students are competent, but the student was not being assessed. Something went wrong, and unfortunately for that student, that was really detrimental to that student from an emotional well-being perspective. Thankfully, the patient and the family members are well, and everything's absolutely wonderful now. But from an emotional and safety perspective, picking up on what I think it was Grace, one of the students that's in the call, I think that's something as children's nurses we need to be aware of, really, that yes, it's great when we can delegate. It doesn't necessarily matter whether the year 1, the year 2, the year 3, but that supervision is really important. And I know when Linda said you didn't want to stand over people, we all wouldn't want to do that, but I think actually probably what our students are crying out for and what our members of staff sometimes need is actually that. And if it was actually a little bit more clear around competence and accountability as senior staff, it would maybe give us the ability to be able to understand when we can step back and when actually we're unable to do so, like in that experience that the student shared in the chat and the experience with the student I mentioned. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, Amanda. And there's something about how do we build enough capacity to actually do that, as well as that clarity as well going forward. So really, really helpful reflections. Michael.
Sorry, I'm going to make another contribution if you don't mind. One of the things that I've learned over since I've been qualified, 13, 14 years, is we seem to just reduce our available vocabulary we use in practice. So when we talk about delegation, we don't really talk about we don't have many words to describe it. So I think it'd be good for us to start thinking about differentiated caseloads, undifferentiated caseloads, thinking about risk in terms of being dynamic, stable, static. And automatically everyone has those three things present, and it starts to make things a lot more granular in description. One of the things that where I think we get it wrong is our hierarchical obsession with banding. And the problem with that is you get band 5, pretty much you're going to expect someone who's autonomous and got a registration. And then band 2, again, quite clear cut, they're not doing anything dangerous, but we've now started to slip into this band 4, and in the community certainly band 5 where band 6 is at, and I think that's the blurring. So because of our obsession with banding, we're a bit lost with what to do with these in-between roles that are new. So anything that comes into the mix, I think we need to, banding's a quick way of understanding, but we need to be less obsessed about it and more about practice. So good news is I've got some papers coming out on this on a study I was doing for the last 2 years around skill mix. So it sort of talks about this.
Fabulous. We'll make sure that we can signpost to those, Michael. I'm very aware that we are heading towards 5 o'clock. We've got 6 minutes. So I'm going to bring Bernie in, and then I'm going to head over to Trudy to see as to whether we can begin to actually pull this together for what is a really mammoth area and clearly an ongoing opportunity for us to continue to do some work on. Bernie.
Okay, so I'm astonished by the breadth of conversation that we've had and the depth of conversation and the complexity of the conversation. and the headaches that people are having to carry with them every single day and going home knowing that there's these decisions that they've made. The thing that sort of came in that made me think, and perhaps just because I'm not involved in delegation very much these days, is that Sue was saying that if you're having to train a large, or being encouraged to train a large number of people in schools to do the tasks not very often. And I was just thinking, what does it feel like to be that child where you've got yet another stranger coming in with slightly fumbly fingers or whatever, not being very confident to their confidence and their well-being at school. So we're talking about it in terms of delegation and the challenges for us as nurses. And I know at the centre of everything we do is the child, but it is such a worry to me how children's experiences are based on how confident or competent the people are that are doing it, because otherwise it's just like, it feels a bit like being in a bit of a war zone where you hope it's going to go well. So yeah, I think maybe when we're making political points, some of that, if we've got evidence to look at children's experiences, and maybe that's out there, I've not looked recently, that might be something that we can do that will actually help support us.
Really, really helpful, Bernie. Thank you.
I was just going to say, Bernie, I know Sue would say this as well, and Maria and Jane that are on the call, that is one of our key assertions, is that from a safeguarding point of view, the child should have as few adults around them, prodding them and providing personal care as possible. So that's, we have we assert that as part of good practice in child protection. Yeah.
I knew you'd be there before me.
Sorry. Was it Michael? I've lost his. Yeah, it's Michael. Yeah, you were talking about language, and somebody else was talking about particular healthcare tasks. I suppose one of the phrases that I coined that was published probably about good 15 years ago now, at least, is that I talk about some of the work that we've done with schools is about using language that they'll understand, because healthcare is a different language for them. And we use the term everyday healthcare tasks. So what is every day for the child? So again, Bernie, going back to the child, what is every day for that child? So enteral feeding, maybe for a particular child. I use that one because that's the classic example. So people might find that a helpful phrase in terms of part of their risk assessment. I suppose the other thing is around, we've made some assumptions today that everybody knows what good practice is around delegation, and so it would probably be good to make sure that people have access to the guidance out there. So, like, you know, there needs to be formal agreements in place if you're delegating outside of your organization. There needs to be risk assessments for each task and individually child. There needs to be the training for competency attainment, ongoing supervision. I often find that people have missed out that ongoing supervision and support, in including incident reviews, and then ensuring updates. I'm sure there's probably a lot more, but those elements. The other thing I want to say is, and I know we've discussed it before in the past over the years, is that the NMC code does not reflect current everyday children's nursing practice in the community. And I say children's because it tends to be emphasised a lot more. There's a lot more delegation that goes on with the wider workforce in children's services. And, you know, I think there's some influencing with the NMC, and I know we've tried, but this is where some of the tension, huge tension in schools between unions that employ the wider workforce in schools and NHS and even private organisations, is that there's that tension because the NMC code of conduct implies that we shouldn't be delegating. So it's not clear, and that causes a lot of tension. And then the other thing I've sort of pulled out is, which Sue was saying, is that we mustn't people think that delegation is an easy answer, an easy solution to supporting the wider children's workforce. But actually, it takes an awful lot of time, as everyone on the call will probably echo, to actually train the wider workforce, or the workforce that you are training, to actually train them to the appropriate competency and confidence to carry out a task. And that should never be underestimated. I mean, yeah, it's been amazing sort of different discussions, but I've just picked out those points, Kath.
Trudy, really, really helpful to have those reflections and just to have that affirmation of keeping this totally child-centred as we move forward is really, really helpful. Bernie, I have popped a link to the RCN guidance in the chat box that provides sort of, you know, a children's example around delegation in the community as well, and that is a helpful resource. I can see that Rebecca is on the call from the RCN. Fabulous to have you here, and you've popped lots of helpful stuff in the chat box as well. Colleagues will be able to actually access a recording of this, and I can see that Jean has popped a few comments. Jean, I don't know, did you have any final reflections that you wanted to make?
I just want to absolutely thank everybody for this energetic conversation, and in some ways it's leaving us with more questions than answers. We have to really get to grips with the people who can make a difference on this. We can, obviously. Our voice is strong, but it needs to be raised with the people who can do something about it. We can have some suggestions of how to take this forward. Would be really, even if it was again we commissioned a working group or something, Kath, that would be useful. What I always know from the teaching we do and from practice partners is that nobody can be deemed competent or even proficient. They are acknowledged as a safe practitioner at the point in time of assessment. And that may be with an individual child or for a group of patients with the same condition. But that is the argument, isn't it? And it's our own registrations when we do delegate and do designate somebody as a safe practitioner, maybe not as competent or proficient. So that's another debate for another day. Please come back on that, but thank you, everyone.
And I'm just going to reinforce that. Thanks. Thanks to everyone that's joined us, and also for your openness and for sharing the challenges as well, because I certainly feel a lot more informed actually than I did at 4 o'clock with regard to some of the challenges that people are actually facing. But let's reflect on what we've heard. Let's sort of, you know, see as to whether we can get a transcription and a summary of the rich discussion that we've actually had, and sort of, you know, consider how we can actually continue to influence and to continue advocate to advocate for the population that we're serving with regard to babies, children and young people. So many, many thanks to everyone for all of the work that you're doing out there. And let's keep this conversation going, and let's keep influencing and make sure that our voices are heard, particularly from an NMC perspective with regard to this area of practice. So many thanks. And Trudy, thanks ever so much. Really, really helpful to have your expertise as well.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop recording now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.